everybody, we are here with writer and director Rob Worsey. Worsey, right? Um,
Yeah,
and
that's right. Yeah.
okay. Um, and he is the man responsible for a film called Among the Living that's coming out. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. How you doing, Noam?
Well, I'm well. Can you tell us a little bit about Among the Living?
Yeah, so it's a kind of a zombie drama, I would say. It's a zombie backdrop. It's survivors interacting, but it kind of leans on the character drama quite a lot. It's a bit of a blend between like a social realism English British film with the British landscapes and the interactions between survivors, but then it's on this horror backdrop of kind of zombie vampire type creatures trying to kill everyone and survivors trying to kill everyone and people not having a very nice time basically.
Mm. Well, you wrote and directed this, so what inspired this particular story?
Well, it started out as a short film, and I wanted to kind of focus on two sets of survivors interacting, deciding whether they could trust each other or not. I'd seen things like Children of Men and 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I love that kind of that idea that it wasn't necessarily the creatures that were the biggest threat.
Yeah.
And so when we started working on this, a few friends of ours, they were kind of pushing to it for us to make features, and we developed it into that. And we mainly focused on trying to keep the survivors as the main threat and the horror backdrop as a surround for it and as a secondary threat. But I just love the idea of survivors not knowing whether to trust each other or not,
Mm.
and being thrown into a situation where you're kind of stuck with people and you don't know whether they're trying to kill you or should you try and kill them, or are they being helpful or what. And I like that kind of play on it.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's like an interesting way to go because yes, you survived a disaster. Now what? And
Yeah.
you really don't know where to go, who to trust. But forgive the comparisons, but this is like you said, it's a lot like Children of Men. It's a lot like 28 Days Later. Um, but what sets this film apart? What was the unique angle you were going for?
It was primarily in the relationship between the two protagonists, the older brother and the younger sister. You know, not just the fact that they were siblings and he was having to look after her. I mean, that's one angle as well, but also Harry, the main character, not being a typical action hero. Basically, he's not a Walking Dead star who's kind of walking through there with a machete, taking out zombies as he goes. He's struggling. He used to be an accountant before the apocalypse. He's not set out for this at all. Um, and so it was kind of that dynamic between him and then his younger sister, who he kind of he's been forced into this situation where he has to look after her, and he's struggling, and she, in fact, does better in in the environment and kind of handles it a lot better than him. So I thought it was an interesting relationship and one that I don't. Well, I mean, I don't seem to see it much in horror films like this, anyway.
Mhm. So you leaned more into the relationship between them as siblings and them being, like fish out of water in this crazy new world. Um, that
Yeah, 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 exactly. And it was because if it was like a parent and daughter, then there's that kind of innate relationship and innate responsibility that you have for your child, and that knowledge that you need to be doing this. But with it being a brother and sister, it was kind of a thing that he's been forced into it, and he's not necessarily his responsibility to protect her, and he can't do it, and he's struggling, and it kind of adds an interesting dynamic of he doesn't want to be doing it, but he has to do it, and he doesn't know how basically. So it adds a bit of an interesting twist on it, I think.
and siblings are just inherently irritating. So that's
Yeah.
just how it is. Okay, so question, how did the pandemic affect production? When was the film shot?
Well, we were scheduled to shoot June 2020, and this was planned and written before the pandemic. And there's a lot of similarities, and as we were going through festivals and stuff, people were asking if we were inspired by the pandemic, and we definitely weren't. Yeah, we were meant to shoot June 2020, and then obviously that didn't happen, and we managed to fit it in the shoot in August 2020. So in the UK, kind of two major lockdowns we had, we managed to slot right in there, which was lucky. And because we were independent filmmakers, it was a tiny casting crew compared to Hollywood productions that were going on, and so following the British Film Commission guidelines and everything, we managed to bubble up as one unit and managed to shoot legally, whereas like the Hollywood productions had to bubble into departments and stuff. But because we
Yeah,
were so small, we managed to get through it, and no COVID incidents, no infections, nothing. So we were lucky with that.
yeah.
But it was just down to good planning from the producers, good health and safety. Everyone got a little party bag of COVID goodies, hand sanitizer, masks. It was weird, but it
Valiancy.
worked. It was good.
Well, yeah, that's like definitely that was such a weird time because it was like hitting a moving target when you were trying to nail down
Yeah,
production during that time.
it was crazy.
And then of course, after you shot, you were able to go into post production. So did that give you a bit more time to kind of massage the story and the in post?
I mean, we to be fair, we did a redraft. So we went to shoot in June and we shot in August, and we redrafted in between that, and that did help actually. So it was looking back, it was nice to get the extra time.
Mm,
Post production kind of went ahead as planned because I edited it, color graded it, and then sent it off for score and sound mix from Mitch and Max respectively. But that was kind of remote working anyway, so I don't think post production really took a hit from COVID. I think that kind of went as planned anyway, but certainly production did, yeah.
yeah. So this was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first feature directing, right? You've
Yeah,
done
yeah.
many shorts. So what's the difference between what did you kind of learn from shooting a short to shoot directing a feature film?
I mean, obviously, so many things. There's tons to it. I think the main thing was to kind of keep a hand on the consistency of performances throughout. At least the way I directed it was I had to have an idea of where characters were all the way throughout the film, so that I could kind of guide performances so that they felt consistent throughout, and they kind of escalated in time rather than kind of jumping all over the place. That's something you don't really have to think about with shorts because the time span's so small that you've only got 10, 12 pages to work out, that you kind of stay consistent naturally through that anyway. So it was, a 14, 15-day shoot over kind of a 3 or 4 week period. And
Mm,
so it was about always kind of keeping the vision and the atmosphere that I had for it in my mind and try and steering performances towards that. That was the kind of biggest learning curve, I would say.
yeah, to keep that energy and that mentality going and consistent. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and exactly. And because we were kind of all over the place with the schedules. So we might shoot something in the first act one day, and then in the afternoon we'd be shooting like the climax. And so it was about knowing at what point performances and actors ramp up and kind of giving them a hand towards that, basically.
Mhm. Yeah. So, and it's so funny because not many people realize that sometimes, most of the times, movies are not shot in a chronological order. So that adds another layer of complexity to what you're doing. Um, Now, you also worked as a director of photography on a lot of other projects. So I love talking with cinematographers and in the way that they tell their story and they help convey the story. But you going from DP to director, how did you kind of marry those two talents, uh, and able to get what you wanted on screen?
Well, I had a DP on this helping me, Jordan Lee, and he was great because we managed to sit down and chat a lot beforehand about how I wanted it to look. But I tried to take a step back from the DP side of it, and so the way we were shooting was very social realism anyway, similar to like a lot of social realism British films where it's kind of rough and ready, handheld, lit for the room. And so it was kind of tasking Jord with that so that I could tell him these are the angles that we're going to want to cover. And we shot it multicam kind of throughout, at least two cameras, sometimes up to four.
Mm,
And so it was a tricky challenge for him in that he had to light for that, but it made sense for the way we wanted to shoot. And so it kind of all came down to being able to give actors a little bit of freedom, because working with the kids, I wanted to work quite a lot of improv, so that we would explain a point of the scene, explain any key lines, and then let them kind of try it out and try different things. I think it really helped their performances rather than repeating the same line over and over for them. And so, kind of tasking Jord with making sure that there's coverage on the angles, making sure that the lighting allows for actors to move around and be reactive, which isn't an easy thing, especially at kind of our budget level where we haven't got access to tons and tons of lights and things like that.
Mhm.
But it was just one of them cases where performance came before visuals in a lot of the aspects, and it's the sort of film that allows that, I think.
Yeah, and especially the way we shot it and everything was a bit more kind of like kind of fast and loose. So how can people see the film?
So it's out streaming tomorrow in the US on the 4th, and then I think the UK is the 10th, but I'll have to double check that. But if people follow Dread, they'll be able to see it on there, and
Yeah,
they'll get all the updates.
excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Rob, so much for taking the time to talk to us about your film, Among the
Cheers, Norman.
Living,
Thank you.
and thank you for diving a little deep in production and talking about the mechanics of that. Everybody, Among the Living comes out tomorrow in the US, and see it. All right. Best of luck, man.
Easy as that. Cheers, Norm. Thank you.
Thank you.